When it comes to drugstore makeup, sometimes it's difficult to find the perfect formulation, the perfect shades, all of the things that you typically might want from a foundation. But when you do find something that you like, you may want to compare it to other formulations to see how they differ. That's kind of where I found myself whenever I decided to test these two Maybelline foundations. They are both within the SuperStay line, but this is going to be the skin tint in the SuperStay line, and this is going to be the Lumi-Matte foundation. This is a newer formulation compared to the skin tint. So today we are going to be doing a deep dive into these two formulations from Maybelline. I'm going to tell you guys the nitty-gritty, the things that I have found about the formulations, the different ingredients in them, and in the end, I'm going to help you guys decide which one, if any, are going to be good for you. I'm very excited for this video because when I started it out, I was going to just do my normal wear test, but I kind of found some interesting things were happening, or not happening, I should say, and it made me really deep dive into these ingredients lists, and I think it's very interesting to be able to look at these under a microscope. So that's what we're going to do today. This one right here is the Maybelline SuperStay 24-hour skin tint. I have this in the shade 220. I've done a video dedicated to this skin tint by itself, a review wear test. I've also compared this against the L'Oreal skin tint, and this is the newer foundation from Maybelline. This is the 30-hour Lumi-Matte foundation, and I also have this one in the shade 220. Now, while they are not exact dupes in terms of shade, they are going to be the closest ones for my skin tone. I have both of these on my skin today, and I have compared these side by side in two wear tests. I wore it all day yesterday for about 7 to 8 hours or so, and I put it on my face today with the same products on top of it. I kind of did the same thing, but I switched the sides of the foundations so I could really see if maybe even the sides of my face differ in terms of longevity and wear and all of those things. So first I want to go over the claims of each of these, and then I will talk about my personal experiences, and then we're going to be talking about the different ingredients that are within both of these. So let's talk about this skin tint right now. This is available in 18 different shades. It says that this is a non-stop power drop that's infused with vitamin C and creates a bright natural look that lasts all day. It's a vegan formula. It brightens and delivers beautiful skin-like coverage for a natural, radiant finish. It does have undertones of cool, warm, and neutral. And while I almost always typically fall into the neutral category when it comes to more high-end foundations, this one in 220 is categorized as a warm undertone. As far as the foundation, this one is available in 24 different shades. It says that this foundation delivers a buildable coverage up to 30 hours of wear. It's supposed to be a light as air formula infused with amino acids to give it a luminous matte finish. This one also has undertones of cool, warm, and neutral, and again, I do fall into the warm category when it comes to this foundation. I would say for both of these are not exact shade matches for me. However, I would say that between the two, the skin tint will be the one that matches my complexion a little bit better, while 220 is slightly lighter and a little bit warmer than what I usually go for. But I can still make it work for the most part. As you can see, it doesn't seem like either side of my face is too different from my natural complexion. Now, when we're talking about referencing these, I am going to be calling this one the skin tint, and I am going to be calling this one the foundation, just so you guys know, so we understand which I'm talking about at any point in time. I'm very familiar with the skin tint. I have been using this pretty much since it first launched back in 2023, I believe. This is probably one of my favorite foundations or skin tint formulas that are at the drugstore. I love how lightweight this feels. While it does have a little bit of sheen in the bottle, when you put it on the skin, it just looks like you have a radiant skin-like finish like the description says it does. And I like this because while it does look like skin and it looks hydrating, it tends to dry down very nicely to where I can put other products, whether it be creams, liquids, or powders on top of it without this foundation becoming compromised. I think that this wears lovely throughout an entire day when I need to have makeup on, and it never looks cakey. It is just such a good formulation. My only gripe with this one is that dropper. I hate the dropper on it. I don't even use it. I'm not even sure if it gets enough product to begin with inside the dropper, I kind of just take it out and I smear whatever is on the outside of the dropper onto the back of my hand or onto my face, and then I will apply it with a brush or my fingertips. That's typically what I like to do. I will go in first with my fingers, I'll spread it out, and then I'll apply it with a brush. But either way, I'm using a brush to apply it all over my face and to blend it in. Now, this foundation is newer to me, but I did recently do a trying new drugstore makeup video for you guys, and I talked all about my first impression on this. I really enjoy how thin and lightweight this feels. It allows you to blend the foundation in, but within minutes it does dry down, and it doesn't dry down to a powdery finish, but it also doesn't seem like it leaves any extra hydration, like extra grease onto the skin. And I find that's beneficial because I typically like to leave a couple minutes between layers of my makeup to allow whatever I just put on my face to dry down before I go on top of it with whatever else I may use, whether it's a cream or liquid blush, bronzer, or just, you know, something that is the next thing in my makeup routine. It doesn't seem to cling anywhere. It doesn't look drying. Aside from my big cluster breakout that I will show you guys in the B-roll of me demoing this yesterday upon application, I already knew that this area was really dry and flaky because I've been treating it with salicylic acid, with benzoyl peroxide, and those ingredients tend to be very drying. So I kind of knew that it was going to look not the best right there. So if you do tend to have flaky, dry skin, this may be a little bit difficult for you to work with if you don't properly prep your skin with very hydrating primers or moisturizers. But overall, I think that this wears beautifully. I get great longevity out of this one as well, and I think that it makes your skin just look really blurred and soft focused almost. Okay, a couple things that I noticed about these. Both of them, like I said, feel very lightweight, very thin upon application. They're super smooth and very easy to blend in. While this one gives you a little bit more blendability time, this one still gives you a ton of time to blend out. I don't find that this dries down and I can't like move it on my skin. I still find that because this is silicone based, it allows me to like really smooth on that application. Something worth noting as well is I found that with my liquid and cream blushes and bronzers, it applied a little bit more pigmented with the foundation, and I think the reason for that is because this did completely dry down. So it's almost like if you've ever taken a powder, like a setting powder or just a powder in general, and then you put a cream on top of it, for some reason it makes the creams pop a little bit more because it's not just melting into the hydrating base that you may have. Whereas with this one, it kind of melts in together a little bit more seamlessly, but because of that, I find that I use a little bit more product when it comes to using creams and liquids on top of a hydrating foundation or concealer. That's kind of just the nature of what I have found. That's how it works for my skin. So I did find that with this one, I was using a lot less cream bronzer and a lot less liquid blush because it tended to pop already on this skin. Now I will show you guys the B-roll of me applying this yesterday. So what I did yesterday was I took the foundation and I put it on the right side of my face, which I think would be the left side for you guys. I put it all over my skin. I did one thin layer, and I also did the same thing on the left side of my face with the skin tint. I did one thin layer. I applied both of these with the same type of brush, but two separate brushes because I have two identical brushes. They are the Sigma Soft Coverage F48 brushes. I like these for foundation because they're very dense, but they're still movable enough to where you can really blend out any foundation that you put onto the skin. It's nice because it doesn't move the coverage and the pigmentation all over the skin. You can still kind of target it exactly where you may want that coverage. So I use the same brush for both of the foundations and skin tints just to keep it as similar to each other as possible. Now you can see with the B-roll that with the skin tint, it does stay a little bit more hydrated upon first application. Like I had mentioned, it looks really nice and flawless. My skin is even, the coverage is even, and it just looks like, again, healthy skin. And you can kind of see that pearlescent finish translate on the skin just as hydration. You don't have to worry about this having glitter or like metallic shimmer or anything like that. And by the way, this does have titanium dioxide. I don't know what that's about. It doesn't say on the description that it has it, but I did notice it when I was really looking at the ingredient list. So that's something to note for you guys. And then as far as the foundation side, again, this does go on very, very thin, almost thinner and less creamy than the skin tint. While it applies more watery and thin, it does dry down a lot faster. I don't know if that's because the actual formulation is thinner. So because of that, it takes less drying time. I'm not entirely sure, but I did notice that this dries down fairly quickly. Pretty much whenever I was done blending this foundation in, it set down almost immediately. And you can see, again, very even coverage. Looks like it covered up a lot of my imperfections. And I would say that these tend to be similar in terms of coverage. I would call this light medium to medium coverage, at least for me. And I usually go in with 2 layers of the skin tint. So I did end up doing that with both the skin tint and the foundation. I almost wanted to say that the foundation looked like it gave me less coverage at first because it dried down matte. And I think something with matte formulations, when it comes to matte formulations for me, I find that I can see my hyperpigmentation and my sunspots a little bit more because you don't have like that shine of light kind of distracting from the hyperpigmentation. And my theory behind that is that you don't have that light refraction from the hydration of the product distracting from the hyperpigmentation. So it may not necessarily be that the foundation gives less coverage, more so that it's not as noticeable. And I say that because even though at first it may look like I have the same amount of coverage on the skin tint, once I have everything on my face, once I kind of powder down my face, the coverage looks almost identical. So that's kind of where I stand. I think they give the same amount of coverage. It really just comes down to the initial finish of these. Now, talking about the wear test, when I put both of these on my skin yesterday, after I finished my makeup, they pretty much looked identical to me. I didn't have to use more powder on one side versus the other. I used the same amount of powder. And by the way, I didn't bake my face. I just dusted a light dusting of my Laura Mercier translucent loose setting powder on both sides of my face. I did not use any primer underneath these foundations, and I also did not set my face with any setting sprays. The only thing that I did was use a setting powder because naturally, as someone that has oily skin, I do need something. I need a little bit of powder for any complexion product to stand a chance on my face. So I took the same amount of powder on both sides of my face, I powdered it down, and that was the amount of finishing and setting that I did. Throughout the day, I did notice that they were kind of acting the same, you know, my blush, my bronzer stayed on the skin the same amount on both sides of my face, but towards the end of the day is when I noticed that I was getting more oil production actually on the side with the foundation on it. Only around my nose where I'm more porous is where I noticed a little bit of a difference. But honestly, if I were someone else and I was looking at both sides of my skin, I would almost say it looked even, but because we were really, really looking at it and I was doing a wear test, I wanted to be as detailed and nitpicky as possible. So I did notice that I was seeing a little bit more shine on the foundation side versus the skin tint side. Now, I thought this was interesting after I looked at the ingredients list, which we will be going over in a little bit. And that's why I decided to do a second wear test day, which is today, so we can really see if there is a difference on either side of my face, where I have the skin tint on the opposite side, this side today, and I have the foundation on this side of my face today. And at the end of the day, I will put some B-roll here, check in with you guys, and let you know my thoughts and if anything changed from my wear test from yesterday. Hello guys, so back with my thoughts. Like I said, I did the same exact thing. I did about 1.5 layers of each skin tint and foundation, and I used the same exact products on top. Again, I did not set with a setting spray, and I also didn't use a primer on either side of my face. I noticed the same things. The textures were pretty much the same. same as they were the day before that. As I mentioned before, how the skin tint felt a little more creamy and the foundation felt a bit more thin. And also coverage wise, it was all pretty much the same, but I did notice where I have that cluster breakout on my chin, the skin tint definitely did look better on top of all of that versus how the foundation looked the day before. Now, talking about how it wore throughout the day, again, I did notice after 8 hours of wear that the right side of my face, your left side, looked more oily, and that was the same result as yesterday, but this time I did have the skin tint on that side of my face. So I don't know if it's the sides of my face that make a difference. I'm not quite sure, but I can say that the entire side of my face looked more oily than it did the day before. So I do think if I continue to use these and test them against each other, the foundation probably will hold up a bit better, especially if I use a primer and a setting spray and all the things that I usually use with it, because again, looking at everything, the foundation will probably show a little bit more longevity, but such a small amount that it might not even really matter. Okay, so those are all of my personal experiences, but because of this, it left me a little bit confused, and I wanted to give you guys more of a definitive answer if you wanted to choose one or the other. Now, I will say price point wise, the skin tint is more expensive. Retail price is $17.99, at least on Maybelline's site, whereas the foundation is $14.99 on Maybelline's site, but I did find the foundation on Amazon for about $12, and I know that Ulta's always having sales on Maybelline, L'Oreal products, stuff like that, and I know that the skin tint I've seen go on sale for as little as like $14, $15. And just out of just pure curiosity, I wanted to see if the ingredients list was like the same basically, and they're not. For the most part, they are very similar, but there are key differences in the ingredients, which we'll get into now. So I just want to let you guys know I am not a cosmetic chemist. All of this is just based on research that I did out of curiosity, and I may be completely wrong on some of these. If you guys have any corrections for me, please let me know in the comments down below. But I did want to point out a lot of similarities and differences within this that may help you determine which one may be better for you. So in terms of the ingredients list, upon first glance, they look very, very, very similar. The first 7 to 10 ingredients or so are pretty much the same. And if you really look at the ingredients list of both of these, they are the general makeup of every foundation. You have your silicones in here, you have your water, you have your pigments and stuff. They're basically the things that will make up a silicone-based foundation. By the way, these are both silicone-based foundations. I was confused about that, but when I actually did the research and I actually asked ChatGPT as well, I put like the ingredients list of both of these in there, and it did determine that both of these are silicone based, even though they do have that water property. While both of these do have water as the first ingredient, that doesn't necessarily mean it is water based. Water typically will help with the spreadability and the application of a silicone based foundation or product. Something also to note is while these do have a lot of similar ingredients, they aren't necessarily in the same order. And if you guys are familiar with ingredients lists, the things at the very top going downwards are from the most of that ingredient to the least amount of ingredients. So there's going to be more of the first couple than there are at the very bottom, if that makes sense. So even though they have these same ingredients, it doesn't necessarily mean that the efficacy, the viscosity, the texture, and the way that the products act on the skin are going to be identical. Something I thought was interesting was these actually both may contain mica, which helps with like that shimmer or luminosity finish. However, it's much more prominent in the skin tint than it is with the foundation. So far, all the information I'm giving you guys, they pretty much sound like they'd be the same thing, right? Like because of the silicones, you get that smooth long wear application, and it has a little bit of that water for that thin, lightweight texture. However, there are, like I said, very key ingredients that really make these different from each other, if not something we see on the skin, but rather how they interact with your skin. Okay, so let's talk about the unique ingredients to the skin tint to start off with. So there's 31 total ingredients in this one. Some of the key ingredients that I think set this apart from the foundation. So it does have that vitamin C aspect to it. So this one does have ascorbic glucoside, which is a derivative of vitamin C, and it provides that antioxidant benefit that this claims it has. In theory, over time, that is supposed to improve dullness and add brightness to the skin. And take that with a grain of salt, because when it comes to skincare within makeup, you definitely would have to use this for a long period of time to see any difference if you're not using the aid of actual skincare. This also has calcium aluminum borosilicate, which is a reflective, kind of pearlescent pigment that's usually used to give a radiant shimmer effect to the skin, which makes sense because that's probably what we are seeing all throughout this bottle. This also has cellulose, which actually helps to create like a smooth, soft, focused finish on the skin. Makes sense because whenever I wear this and I set it down and I have like my full face of makeup, it does look like the skin is very blurred. And like I mentioned, this does have a bit of titanium dioxide, which I had no idea about, which is a white pigment that is providing opacity and sun protection. Now, don't mistake that as SPF. This does not say that it has an SPF of whatever. It just seems like it has a little bit of that added benefit. Now, my theory and why they have that titanium dioxide in there is because it may aid that vitamin C derivative that they have, because while it's supposed to brighten, even, and get rid of dullness, it may use the aid of the titanium dioxide to provide a little bit of sun coverage or UV protection. Now, again, I'm not saying this is an SPF. I'm not saying it's a sunscreen. Okay, so after looking at this ingredient list, if you're looking at it on paper, you're kind of like, okay, it's gonna be dewy, radiant, hydrating on the skin. So my question then was, why does this work on my skin? As someone with oily skin, how come I can get this to work on my skin, make it look great all day long, and give me very minimal oil, like craziness at the end of the day? You know, it does give me a little bit of oil control. So I looked even further into that. And the reason why I think this still works on my skin is for a couple of different ingredients that are included in here. So first, it has this ingredient right here, which I'm not going to attempt to say because I know I will butcher it, but basically this is a film forming agent that allows for flexible, movable coverage that creates almost like a barrier on the skin that resists humidity and oil breakdown. So this helps with the longevity that I'm seeing within this skin tint. It also has silica, which is known for the oil absorbing properties and kind of for that soft focus blur that we're seeing. And it also has silica silylate, I think that's how you say it, which says it's a more structured version of silica. So this specific ingredient says that it maintains a balance between a dewy finish and controlling excess oil throughout the day. So these three ingredients themselves, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense why it works for me. So overall, I really like the structure of this formulation. I think it makes a lot of sense for my preferences. As someone that has oily skin, I still love a dewy, natural look on the skin, but I need something that's going to control those oils. And this on paper seems like it's perfect for someone like me. Okay, now let's move on to the foundation. So the foundation has 39 different ingredients, and these are the ones that I pulled out that I thought made this unique to the skin tint. So first, I want to address the amino acids that this claims that it has. So it has glutamic acid, which does help with hydration as well as barrier repair on the skin, which is why I feel like maybe this does not feel as drying as other matte foundations. It also has that glycerin, which acts as a humectant, and it draws hydration to the skin without making it too dewy. It has glycerol acrylate, which helps with the wear time of this foundation. And it also has hydrolyzed soy protein, which is supposed to help with like texture and firmness of the skin. Now, again, when it comes to these skincare ingredients, you have to take it with a grain of salt because this by itself is not going to give you firm, like no texture skin if you're not already doing a skincare routine. Two ingredients that I think really set this apart from the skin tint. First one being kaolin, and kaolin is a sort of clay that helps to absorb excess oil into the skin, which makes sense to why this is more mattifying on the skin, and it's supposed to give you longevity and oil control. And this also has niacinamide versus having vitamin C, and niacinamide typically again will help with texture and oil control on the skin if you are more on the oily side. And on that note, niacinamide is actually really great for those of us that are acne prone, if you are not sensitive to niacinamide. In addition to the kaolin and the other mattifying ingredients that we've already talked about, this also has perlite, which is a natural mineral that helps to absorb oils in the skin. This is really common in a lot of mattifying products. And the last amino acid that I was able to pull out of the ingredient list is proline, which helps with collagen production and elasticity in theory. So all of the characteristics of the ingredients within this is more for that mattifying but smooth, soft, focused look, but it also has those skin loving ingredients like niacinamide and proline and glutamic acid that are supposed to help to just refine the texture and also the evenness of the pores and stuff like that. So this seems to be more geared towards those of us that have combination to oily skin, while this one seems more geared towards those that have dry to normal to combination skin. So I feel like they're really trying to cater to all types of skin, but they definitely have their specific strengths to them. Now that we've gone through all of the ingredients in both of these, which one should you get? I think there are 3 key things that you should think of when it comes to deciding which one you might think is better. I don't think you need both of them. I will say that outright. I think you can choose one or the other. It just comes down to your preferences. So the first thing I think you should ask yourself is, what are you sensitive to in terms of active ingredients? These both have active ingredients. The skin tint does have vitamin C, while the foundation does have that niacinamide and those amino acids. If you're sensitive to vitamin C, don't go for the skin tint, obviously. And if you're sensitive to niacinamide, don't go for the foundation. That's a pretty easy way to determine it if you have a sensitivity to either of those ingredients. Kind of in that same vein, the second question you should probably ask yourself is, how will your skin type react to the finish of each one of these? Now, if you want something that is luminous up front, something that will stay looking natural throughout the day, it'll give you minimal, but it will give you oil control, I think the skin tint would be a great option for you. If you like something that's a little bit on the dewy side, but it's not going to get increasingly dewier or greasy throughout the day, so long as you set your face down, I think the skin tint would definitely be the one for you, even though you don't have as many shades to choose from when it comes to this one. If you do find a shade match for you, are those trade-offs worth it versus the foundation? You know, that's kind of a question that you can ask yourself. However, if you want something that's going to dry down a little faster, maybe you don't have as much time to dedicate to doing your makeup throughout the day, and maybe you want to use a little bit less of your cream and liquid products, the foundation may be a good one for you to consider. And also, if what you're looking for in the long term is going to be more even skin and something that's going to be a little bit more catered to your overall skin health and barrier health, then the foundation may be a good addition to your skincare routine that you're already using to achieve those goals. The last question I think that you should ask, and probably the most important in my opinion, because it will kind of determine how often you use either foundation or skin tint, is how is this going to fit into your current makeup routine? So if you are someone that really loves a cream or liquid bronzer or blush, you're someone that loves that more natural look to the skin tint I think would more seamlessly fit into your makeup routine. And even if you are someone that still loves those liquids and creams but does still powder like me, I love my liquids and creams, but I do tend to bake and set and powder my face anyways. If you are someone that doesn't mind doing those things, then the skin tint would be a really great option. But if you are more like no fuss, you want to use as minimal product as possible, but you still need that finish, that more mattifying finish, and you want something that is not going to give you too much dew, even if you use like creams and liquids and stuff on top, then the foundation might be a really good base because it's not going to be an additional thing that you have to necessarily set down. So with all of that being said, I think both of them are a really good option. I can't deny that I like both of them. It just comes down to how it'll fit into my routine that day, kind of what I'm feeling, like if I want something more glam, more matte, or if I want something a little bit more dewy and more natural throughout the day. Now, I think in terms of longevity, while I did see a difference with my oil production, it wasn't enough for me to say one controls my my oils way better than the other. I think that they are so similar that it's almost not even an issue for me. Now, if you are someone that is very important and you want your oils to come through, or maybe you don't want any type of oils to come through, you want the most minimal amount, then hopefully my wear tests are helpful to you and my results are helpful for you either way. In conclusion, I do think these are both wonderful. Do you need both of them? No. I think it just comes down to what you're looking for in that moment. They may be interchangeable if you're not, again, sensitive to either of these active ingredients, and just play around with them. See how they work within your routine. Once you get it, if you love it, then you're not missing out on the other one. All right, guys, that was my super extensive, in-depth review and comparison of both the Maybelline Skin Tint and the Maybelline Lumi-Matte Foundation. Leave in the comments down below what you thought was the most helpful. I would love to know if you guys love these deep dives into the ingredients list, because I thought that was really, really interesting. And I just want to bring something a little bit more fresh and a little bit more helpful for you guys in the long run. I will leave right here a video comparing this Maybelline Skin Tint with the L'Oreal Skin Tint if you are curious. And until then, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.